Please be seated. This Parliament once more reconvene. Honorable members and those in the gallery, you notice I called the recess because when the Honorable MP for St. Patrick began to address the House, I noticed that neither the Prime Minister nor the MP for St. George's Northwest were around. So I called the recess to create the space to give the two gentlemen a chance to make their contribution to the debate. Because if the Honorable MP for St. Patrick East had continued, then the Honorable MP for St. George's Northwest, nor the Prime Minister would have a chance to make a contribution to the debate. All right, so hence the delay. It took me longer than 3 minutes. But this is where we are. I am now waiting on the other two members to make the contribution to the debate. Honorable Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and pleasant afternoon to you. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't see any of the members of the opposition present, and the only one who has not contributed to the debate is a member of Parliament for St. George Northwest. No, I think it's fine. I think I'm being heard clearly. Mr. Speaker, just so that we are clear, if I speak, I will use my prerogative to conclude the debate as Prime Minister. So I am prepared to seek clarification. I'm not sure whether you were able to ascertain the whereabouts of the Member of Parliament for St. George Northwest. And I'm happy to give him the opportunity to make his contribution to the debate. And so if you need to take an additional recess to ascertain that he wishes to so do, I am fine. But if not, I will exercise my prerogative as the Prime Minister and obviously be the one to conclude the debates.
Honorable MP, I did contact both yourself and the Honorable MP for St. George Northwest on the issue. And I expect him to be here if he wanted to make his contribution to the debate. I suggest that he proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and pleasant afternoon to everyone. I take it, Mr. Speaker, that my time is an hour and a half?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, according to the standing orders.
So, Mr. Speaker, I join with my colleagues on this side of the House, as well as the colleagues on the other side, and the independent member for the town of St. George in making my contribution to the estimates of revenue and expenditure as presented by the Honourable MP for St. Patrick East and the Member of Parliament, and the Minister of Finance, under the theme Grenada Resilient and Rising. Mr. Speaker, I want to start by expressing my profound appreciation, I think, first to the Minister of Finance, the Permanent Secretary, Deputy Permanent Secretary, Chief Budget Officer, and other officials at the Ministry of Finance for the enormous work that they've done in presenting the estimates of revenue and expenditure and in the presentation made by the Minister of Finance. I think they deserve significant acknowledgement. And Mr. Speaker, they did so bearing in mind that we had a traumatic national event of Hurricane Beryl on the 1st of July, followed by significant rainfall that caused significant challenges to us in November, and also in the midst of the piloting of new financial software, particularly the budget software used for the preparation of the budget. And as was disclosed at the Finance Committee meeting, it was the first time that the budget software was being used. It's called Questica, and I want to again thank the team for being able to, with the time constraints that they face, use the software to present the budget. I think, although this is the first time, it is certainly, I think it makes navigating the estimates of revenue and expenditure as well as the summary reports presented a lot easier for all of us. So again, Mr. Speaker, I want to express my gratitude to the Minister of Finance and his team and to commend them for the excellent job done in difficult circumstances. Mr. Speaker, I rise first in my capacity as Member of Parliament for the Virgin Parish, St. David. And I want to start by thanking all of the residents of St. David for the significant support shown to me as MP and shown to Grenada over the last year. The staff at the Parliamentary Office, and we've also got some relatively new staff, so both the outgoing and incoming staff. I also want to thank the members of the National Democratic Congress in St. David, the constituency branch, the polling division groups, and all of the social, sporting community groups that have worked with me towards delivering and fulfilling the mandate given to me by the people of St. David. I do want to especially thank the National Democratic Congress because sometimes we shy away from accepting that we are in office because of a party. And it is the parliamentary system of democracy through political parties that allow us, except when you decide to become an independent, to be in Parliament. I don't think we have a great history of independents being elected as independents and coming to Parliament. They tend to come on a party ticket, and then when things get rough, they become independent. So I am not going to underappreciate the significance of the fact that we here, on this side of the House, are members of the National Democratic Congress, that we are elected on a National Democratic Congress ticket, and that we were given the mandate that we got in 2022 as party members of the National Democratic Congress. I want to express profound gratitude to the citizens of Grenada for the last year and a half. We've had a turbulent year. We started 2024 on the high of celebrating our 50th anniversary of independence. That joy was quickly robbed with the passage of Hurricane Beryl, particularly for citizens of Carrick-on, Petite Martinique, and St. Patrick. But we navigated those turbulent waters, and the resilience of our people has shown through. I want to thank the Cabinet Office and the team of men and women who sit in the Cabinet with me, including our parliamentary secretaries, Ms. Francis and Mr. Quince, and I seek your leave to acknowledge them by name as part of the governance of this country. I could not think of a better group of men and women to be serving at this time with, and I want to recognize and thank them for their fearless service, their unwavering commitment and support to the people of Petite Martinique, Carriacou, and Grenada. And MP for St. George Northeast, I think, summed it up best when he talked about his experience in Petite Martinique and Carriacou and seeing MP for Carriacou and Petite Martinique himself giving away the generator that was sent for him to the elderly home, because we are about putting people first, not ourselves first. And so, Mr. Speaker, this budget is a people's budget because we are interested in the people's economy. And so, Mr. Speaker, with your leave, since we normally have to quote our references, this is a book. It's one of the New York Times bestseller, and it's called The Deficit Myth. I said before, Mr. Speaker, that if I had to service debt, or service the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique, I will service the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. So, Mr. Speaker, if we have to borrow to service the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique, we will borrow. But, Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance in his presentation made it abundantly clear, as clear as outside is now, that the budget is fully financed. And the Honorable MP for the Great South went to some lengths to explain basic accounting in relation to simple concepts like your current account surplus. But we are not hiding and generalizing. We can refer to the actual budget documents, which all of us have in the House. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance made it clear that of the $357 million deficit in the overall fiscal package presented, that deficit is financed first by a drawdown of $287 million from the consolidated fund. Now, what does that mean? It simply means, Mr. Speaker, that the government of Grenada has in its bank accounts savings of $287 million that it intends to use to finance the projected shortfall between the revenue it expects to collect in this 2025 and the money it intends to spend. So let me say that again. A budget is a plan. The team at the Ministry of Finance projects the amount of revenue it expects to get, and where does the revenue come from? Basically, from taxpayers' money. From the VAT, from the customs duties, from the property tax, from the income tax. So if we expect to get $100 from all of this for the year, but we intend to spend $120, then there's a deficit of $20. If we have $15 saved in a consolidated fund, we can spend the $15, so it gives us $115. There's a $5 difference. We borrow the $5 and you get the $120 of actual financing that you need to finance the budget. So when the Minister of Finance says that the budget is fully financed, he didn't just say so, he actually pointed to the source of financing. He pointed to the fact that a drawdown of $287 million from the consolidated fund will be used. So I want the nation to appreciate that. It means in accordance with the fiscal prudence and the saving for a rainy day and the understanding that we need to live conservatively and the Susu culture and the putting aside. There are savings of $287 million that the government can draw on to finance the budget. And I want to commend the Minister of Finance and his team for the fiscal management. The other part of the financing, Mr. Speaker, comes clearly from the regional securities market, the RSM. And again, Mr. Speaker, those things are clearly spelled out in all of the documentation that has been provided to us. And this is nothing new or novel. Every year, long before we came into office, the government raises money on the regional securities market, and these bonds are refinanced every year at every budget cycle. And so that happens, and sometimes the amount goes up, sometimes the amount goes down. And there's roughly about 50 million of that is going to be refinanced or raised, and so the budget will be fully financed. So that's why I started by calling it the deficit myth, Mr. Speaker, because it's a myth. The budget is fully financed. The $287 million are in the consolidated fund. And if or when required, those funds will be used to ensure that the planned expenditure of the government can take place. So I wanted to make that clear, Mr. Speaker, because the presentation of the Minister of Finance is clear. All of the documents which were supplied to each member of this Honorable House makes that clear. And so, Mr. Speaker, really and truly, there is a song and dance about borrowing. And although we have not yet sought to consider the hospital loan authorization bill, I will take the opportunity, since we're speaking about borrowing, to deal with this one time. Mr. Speaker, to borrow, we need legal authority. And the legal authority must come from this Parliament. We have made it clear that we intend to pursue the construction of a climate-smart new hospital. To do so, we have to secure the funds for doing so. We're not joking around about this issue, we are serious about it. And therefore, this year, Mr. Speaker, we intend to, if necessary, contract the loan so that we have the financing in place. And hence the reason for coming to Parliament to seek the authorization. So you see, Mr. Speaker, we are transparent. We are clear. We are coming and laying before this House and therefore before the public any borrowings that we need to do. We are not going and trying to, in some back room, raise borrowings or debt on behalf of the people of Grenada without the people knowing about it. So, again, there is no need for us to believe a lot of the noise in the market about whether or not...
Is that a point of order?
Yes.
It's a point of order?
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Mitchell.
Mr. Speaker, I just need serious point of order as to what really is happening in this House at this particular time. I just need clarity, because that's clearly a breach of the fundamental rules of the Parliament. I want to know what is the situation as far as the budget motion mover and who is closing the debate. Who is closing the debate? I just want to know what's happening, Mr. Speaker. Because as a serious member of this House, I believe it's necessary for us to obey the rules of the House.
All right, the question is asked. Yeah?
Yes, I need to know exactly what is happening.
Yes.
That will determine what I do relative to my own situation in this House at this time.
Right. The Honorable Prime Minister has decided that he will be one to close the debate.
Wait, okay, Mr. Speaker, listen, is that the Prime Minister may wish to close the debate, but the mover of the motion has to first decide. He has to give the Prime Minister, whoever it is, the responsibility to close. So is the mover of the motion agreeing and deciding that he will not be able to speak going forward? Although, because, Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance got up and started to move the motion to close the debate. And that is his fundamental right as the Minister of Finance. We are all equals here in this House, you know. Different, whether
Dr. Mitchell.
Minister,
Dr. Mitchell.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. This is a serious statement, Mr. Speaker, here. And I really wish that we need to obey the rules of the House.
Dr. Mitchell,
Mr. Speaker.
the Speaker is on his feet.
Yes, go ahead.
Now, let me just read it for the benefit of the House. Right? We're talking about the standing orders. And you will see it's not the minister, it's the Prime Minister who made the decision. I'll read what the standing order says. I'll read it for the hearing of everyone. No, Dr. Mitchell, the Speaker is on the floor. Let me do what I said I'm doing.
Well, Mr. Speaker, you're getting mad with me.
No, I'm getting mad with you.
Yeah, well, I'm
on the floor.
Mr. Speaker.
Dr. Mitchell, let me read Let me,
Obey the rules, Mr.
I'm reading the rules.
Mr. Speaker, you're an umpire.
Dr. Mitchell, I'm reading the rules. Allow me
You
to.
are an umpire. You are not a member of the
Dr.
government.
Mitchell, don't argue with the speaker.
No,
I'm reading the
I am
rules.
arguing with the speaker, Mr. Speaker.
Could you please turn off your mic, Dr. Mitchell?
I am. I'm not.
Right. So let me read the
Obey the
rules.
rules.
The rule says, Standing Orders 40, subsection 5, I want everybody to listen. The minister finally concluding the debate whether the Prime Minister, the Minister of Finance, or any other minister designated by the Prime Minister, may speak for 1.5 hours in addition to his earlier speech on the budget if he had already so spoken. Designated by who? The Prime Minister. So it's not the minister's decision, it's the Prime Minister's decision.
Mr. Speaker, let me just make this point. The Minister of Finance got up. Already, what you're talking about there has we gone past that. The Minister of Finance got up to close the debate. That is what he did. If this was decided before, then the Prime Minister would get up at the appropriate time and whoever the minister designate. He has to designate, and okay, who it is. He is the mover of the motion, Mr. Speaker.
Right.
And therefore, what you're talking about, a decision the Prime Minister make. Ramsay is no boss in this house. He's just a member of the house.
Dr. Mitchell?
Mr. Speaker, he is a member of the house.
Please resume your seat.
Say he wants to give.
Please resume your seat.
I heard the Prime Minister say he wants
Please
to
resume your seat, Dr. Mitchell.
Yeah, he always tell me give me a seat.
Resume your seat,
I'm your
please.
little boy.
Because
Give me a seat.
I'm standing and you're standing.
Yes, because you are not obeying the rules of the House, Mr.
I just read it.
You are not. The Minister of Finance, I won't be talking to the little boy.
Honorable
The
MP,
Minister of Finance,
please resume your seat.
the Minister of Finance, listen, Mr. Speaker, let me tell you something. There's 40 years I spent in this house, and you cannot break the rules of the House with impunity. You cannot do that.
Allow the speaker to speak, please.
Well, I've done so, and I'm making a point.
But you're on the
The
floor
Minister
as if
of
you are the
Finance-
speaker.
The Minister of Finance got up and started moving a motion to close the debate. And therefore, he has that right. I have never stood up for the Minister of Finance, but in this case, I have no choice because this is a fundamental rule. And anything else that happens here, Mr. Speaker, I will not be part of this because my legacy would imply that I stood when the fundamental rules of the House are being broken, and I participated in this. I would not be part of my legacy in the twilight of my representation and service in this Parliament of this country, Mr. Speaker. And I really wasn't looking for this, but it appears that I have no choice. As one who has spent his life in this Parliament 40 years, going to 41, and to see the rules being broken with impunity, I have a difficulty, Mr. Speaker. And I mean, you can throw me out, you know. That is a simple matter. You can't throw me out.
Dr. Mitchell? Honorable MP for St. George Northwest, can you please turn off your mic? Wow. Honorable Prime Minister, you please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Just hold on, Honorable Prime Minister. Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm rising now on a matter of principle.
No.
And in relation to...
No, it's either for clarity or
So I'm rising on a matter
a point of order.
of clarity,
The rules are clear.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my concern is that one member of this House started closing the debate. Mr. Speaker, for some reason, you were notified of a change. Mr. Speaker, you called the member to you. You spoke to the member. The member returned to his seat and continued closing the debate. Mr. Speaker, obviously, you had additional instructions. And so you stop the member. You pause the debate of the member, the contribution, the closing of the member. You came to the back, Mr. Speaker. You engaged with us, Mr. Speaker. And then you came back and you allow another member of this House to start closing again. Mr. Speaker, it would be impossible to sit and to partake of this. Mr. Speaker, I've heard it. If we want to leave, leave. That's not the point.
No.
Mr. Speaker, the point is
Honorable
that we
leader of the
sat
opposition.
and we started listening the closure of the debate. And it appears that you had other instructions.
You are repeating yourself. You made
Thank
the point,
you.
please take a seat. Right? Honorable Prime Minister, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I take it we should allow the colleagues to depart. I will sit to allow my dear friend from St. Mark to take her time. I'd like to invite the honourable member for the Tongue of St. George to take over the position of opposition leader since there's no one else in the House. I can do so. But I'd like to thank him for staying and keeping some dignity to the process. So, Mr. Speaker, as I was saying, I was elected by the people of St. David, and so I think it's incumbent for me to start by simply reporting on some of the accomplishments in the parish of St. David. Mr. Speaker, over the period we've built through and I want to emphasize this because I heard the MP for the Tongue of St. George talking about caretaker and the MP do this. He said he heard the member for the constituency of St. George Southeast talk about I do this as MP. And I think he knew what the MP was saying is that through the various government agencies, via his representation, they were able to achieve. So I want to keep my language disciplined by saying through the Ministry of Housing, Social and Community Development led by our great sister, Senator Gloria Thomas, and the Ministry of Mobilization, Implementation and Transformation led by the Honorable MP for the Great South, we were able to build 79 homes in St. David during the period. Housing assistance and material distribution were given to 237 persons. The WASH program continued, Mr. Speaker. We, through the pilot stage, constructed 37 bathrooms and toilets in the village of Belial, and we've since moved to the villages of Barrett and Belle Plaine, where 33 units are under construction, and in Corinth, in a small village known as the Coconut, another 13 units are under construction. And I want to pause here a little, Mr. Speaker, to point out, as the MP for the South said, when we build bathrooms, Mr. Speaker, we are not seeking to give our people the worst. We are ensuring that the bathrooms are built, that they're tiled, that they're painted, that the faucets, the sink, the toilets, the plumbing, the septic tank are all done, that the bathrooms are painted, they are built as concrete roofs so that persons can in fact put tanks above the roofs to assist them with rainwater harvesting. And we work with NOASA through an MOU to ensure that they are actually supplied with water. So, Mr. Speaker, when we talk about the dignity of particularly our women and girls, and particularly our senior citizens, we ensure that we move them from a state of open defecation in pit latrines, or sometimes people still bathe in rivers, they still fetch water from the rivers. We can't pretend those things are not happening in far larger numbers than they should be, Mr. Speaker. So I want to compliment the team who are instigating the WASH program, not only in St. David, but the program has also spread to St. Andrew Northeast, Northwest, and I believe Southwest as well. And the report I have indicates, in the case of St. Andrew, that there are over 40 units that are being constructed. The WASH program is being run through a non-profit organization that is partnering with the government and NOASA called Nation Builders Inc. It's a pity that the member of Parliament for St. Andrew East has followed the leader and left the chamber, because she inquired from me during the Finance Committee meeting as to whether any subvention had been given to Nation Builders, and I told her I would report back to her. So even though she isn't here, I hope her constituents are listening, because the WASH program is taking place in her constituency, not because of her, but because of this government which cares for the people in that constituency. And so for the record, Mr. Speaker, I'm reporting that over the period, $4,535,000 has been allocated as a one-off subvention to Nation Builders Inc. to support the WASH program throughout the various constituencies. So I hope at least that our constituents who are either following the presentation online or in person can hear of the program, and they can continue to look forward to our support for them, notwithstanding the absence of the MP. Mr. Speaker, streetlights. Again, I will point it that through working with the Ministry of Mobilization, Implementation and Transformation, 215 solar streetlights. The MP seems surprised. 215 solar lights have been installed in various parts of St. David's, ranging from Mango Hole, Apwetut, Badia, Coles Gap, Vincent's, Mount Tranquil, Belial, Syracuse, Current Housing Scheme, Monrepo, Malmont, Bellevue, and Laurelland. So again, to the hardworking team who've collaborated between MIT, the MP's office, and the constituents of St. David, I want to thank you. And we obviously, as the Minister said, because they are solar lights, we are not consuming any fossil fuels, and it is a sustainable project utilizing the God-given natural resources that we have. We completed the construction of the Vincent's Community Center on July 25th through kind sponsorship, first of the Roman Catholic Church, which has allowed us to use the site, and the People's Republic of China in Grenada, and I want to commend them for, both of them, for the support. We refurbished the current community center in June of 2024, and again, that was done through the auspices of the Ministry of Social and Community Development, led by Senator Gloria Thomas. We also refurbished the Old West Store Community Center, and largely this was done through donations from the Hengsheng Property Development Limited, which is the developer that's developing the Leverer project, and other donations by other supporters. So this was done with no government assistance whatsoever. But it is not the first community center that we've done in St. David's with no government assistance whatsoever. We completed the Barrett Community Center and the upgrade of the playing field with no government assistance. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to emphasize that as MP, my job is to try and find resources wherever and whenever to support our residents in St. David's without necessarily drawing on the purse strings of the government of Grenada. And so I want to take the opportunity to thank the Hengsheng Property Development Group, to thank the Roman Catholic Church who's been partnering with us in allowing us to use some of their sites. Mr. Speaker, we launched a number of play parks for our young children in St. David, Lassages being the largest. I think we can all accept at the opening of that event the tremendous joy that we saw from children and parents and grandparents who had the opportunity to use the play park. We've since established in Barrett and Malmont. We intend to also have in Bellevue as well. And again, this was done through the kind compliments of support from the Embassy of the People's Republic of China in Grenada. For the record, Mr. Speaker, we intend as a government to ensure that play parks are constructed throughout the length and breadth of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. And the Minister of Youth and Sport and her team is committed to ensuring that this gets done, particularly in places like St. John, Carriacou, Petite Martinique, St. Mark, because, Mr. Speaker, while we may be a majority government, we still intend to take care of those constituents who voted for the other side, because, as we point out, we are the government for all of Grenada. We put the people of Grenada first. And in addition to the play parks, Mr. Speaker, for example, in Lassages, we've installed safety railings, benches, tables, and additional green spaces, a flower garden, so that our residents can continue using these green spaces. A number of infrastructure projects are taking place. In the interest of time, I wouldn't necessarily go through all of them, but I want to highlight the construction of Block 5 of the St. Dominic's Roman Catholic School, which has been built under the Basic Needs Trust Fund, or what is commonly known as the BNTF Trust Fund. The project cost is $1.4 million, and the funding is coming via the Caribbean Development Bank and the government of Grenada. We expect that the contract will wrap up before the end of the year. Right next to the St. Dominic's RC School, the Laura retaining wall, which is a major retaining wall because we run the risk of the road collapsing, and so access to Laura as a village is actually threatened, and so we are building a significant retaining wall there at a project cost of about $500,000. Mr. Speaker, the Minister for Agriculture, the Marine Economy, Forestry, etc., the Honourable Lennox Andrews, and Member of Parliament for St. Andrew Southwest, has been very keen to ensure that the land, we have a lot of regularization to do, Mr. Speaker. We have public service regularization to do, we have land regularization to do, and so the Lacalome village. Now, Lacalome was a settlement built via the compliments of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela since post-Hurricane Ivan. The homes were built and persons were allowed to take possession of the homes. But some 20 years later, people are still without title for these homes. And so the minister and his team, together with the MP's office, is working to ensure that we can quickly regularize the situation and give persons the opportunity to own their homes, and to ensure that they're empowered and that they can mortgage it, they can improve it, they can sell it, they can pass it on to their loved ones when they depart. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Agriculture and his team distributed in excess of $23 million to farmers and fisher folk in the post-Hurricane Beryl income support program. For the district of St. David and St. George South, some 627 farmers received checks totaling $3,064,500 in income support. I have the other statistics, and I will simply use it because although I'm the MP for St. David, I'm also the Prime Minister, and it's important because I want everybody to appreciate everybody got. In the case of St. Patrick North, some 1,326 farmers received payments totaling $7,029,000. In the case of St. Andrew, which is known as the Eastern Zone, some 2,130 farmers received checks totaling $10,863,000. And in the case of the Western Zone, St. George, some parts of St. George and St. John West, some 522 farmers received checks totaling $2.7 million for a grand payout of $23,899,500. Nursery managers and agro-processors also benefited under this program. In the case of agro-processors, 44 received checks totaling $202,500, and 9 nursery managers received checks totaling $40,500. So, Mr. Speaker, when we talk about supporting farmers, and when we talk about recognizing that they would face the hardship brought on by Hurricane Beryl, and when everybody wants to know what happened to the CRIF money, and spend the money, we spend the money. We gave it to our farmers, to our processors, and to our nursery managers. Mr. Speaker, we have in St. David's distributed assistance to a number of persons, all through donations and support from individuals. To underprivileged students, we've distributed 30 laptops. We have distributed over 165 back-to-school supply packages between the September period. We have distributed over 75 post-hurricane burial hampers to persons who were impacted. Christmas time, we distributed over 800 Christmas hampers, totaling a value of $100,000. We've executed for our kids tree lighting events in the parish and distributed over 500 toys to children. We sponsor our sports, all primary and secondary school sports we contribute towards the sponsorship, including the Crowshoe Primary School, which is in St. Andrew Southeast District, strictly speaking. So whether it's the relay meet, whether it's the football clubs and the supplies, whether it's support to the Malmung Fashion Design and Training under the Ministry of Social and Community Development. And I want to spend a little time speaking about this, Mr. Speaker, because this is a training that was organized by a volunteer public servant who offered to volunteer time to organize the training, to get the trainers, to coordinate the program, to make sure that we can get the NTA approval for certification, to do all of the work necessary without being paid, to give young women, middle-aged women, and senior citizens women the opportunity to learn to sew. And when I went to visit them, one of the older ladies said to me, "Thank you for not having this automatic youth 35 age and under program," because she always wanted to sew and had never received the opportunity. And now she's probably in her 60s, was getting the opportunity to pursue something that she always wanted to do. And I highlight this, Mr. Speaker, because in Grenada we need to learn to train and retrain and constantly learn. The notion that school and education is only for young people is something that we need to push back against. So this training is nearing completion, and we expect that they will be certified, and I have given a commitment to them that I will support them in forming a cooperative so that they can actually form a business and offer their services to the public, because it is difficult to find someone to alter a pants, a shirt, a shoes in Grenada. And so we need to encourage these women, and many of them, Mr. Speaker, are persons who dropped out of school, got pregnant in school, who themselves are still suffering physical and domestic violence and abuse, so we need to be able to support them. We in fact have one donor already who has offered to help support the cooperative, and they are simply waiting on us to be able to continue the support for the women. Support for life skills and training under the Ministry of Social and Community Development, and I want to highlight projects such as the Stop and Think with Dr. Neil Chaitan, which has been held at the Current Community Center, to address young men, to ensure that we can enable interventions from young men who are at risk or who may have anger management issues, to ensure that the risk of them getting into contact with the criminal justice system is minimized. And yes, to the MP for the town of St. George, we welcome your recommendations that it is about crime prevention and early intervention as early as possible, because by the time it gets to the police, we are dealing with crime, and we are dealing likely with criminals, and by then it is too late. And if we think early intervention and education and support for young men and women is too expensive, I want to leave this fact with us. There are less than 20 young men and women at the Baculet Juvenile Rehabilitation Center. In fact, let me get the exact number so that, Mr. Speaker, I don't give inaccurate information. But to house these and take care of 18, so the number is 18. There are 18 young men and women at the Baculet Juvenile Rehabilitation Center. 15 male and 3 female. Do you know what the staff count is? Do you know how much staff we employ at the Baculet Rehabilitation Center? 65. Let me repeat that. We have 18 young men and women at the Baculet Rehabilitation Juvenile Center. On it. But the staff count is 65. So if you think educating our young men and women, if you think early intervention is expensive, you should try housing them after they have come into contact with the criminal justice system. That's a ratio of staff to these young persons, and I'm deliberately refraining from calling them any other thing, that is higher than a 5-star hotel. It is more staff to these young men and women than you get in any primary or secondary school in Grenada. So the point I'm making, Mr. Speaker, is our criminal justice system, if we continue to wait till people become criminals to intervene, is going to cost the state 10 times more than it will cost us to intervene at an early stage, to educate them, to give them opportunities, to empower them to deal with anger management issues, to make sure that our schools continue to act as a place for civilizing and educating and teaching proper behavior, etc., etc. So I just highlight this, Mr. Speaker, because the Minister for Social and Community Development has talked about things like teaching parenting skills and making sure that we fund those things. Now, we may laugh and say everybody's supposed to know what it is to be a parent. That's not the case. That is not the case. And so we need to make sure that we fund those programs because they're far cheaper than building juvenile rehabilitation centers, and not just the staff. We're not talking about the utilities, the food, the security, the ground maintenance, all of that comes with it. And perhaps significant risk that they are not rehabilitated and that they end up fully into the criminal justice system. So we continue, Mr. Speaker, to emphasize early intervention in areas like sports. We have a program known as the Joyce Cricket School, Journey of Youth, which is currently based at the Laura Playing Field, which targets primary school children in St. Dominic's RC, current government school, St. Teresa's RC, where they are trained in the proper techniques of playing hardball cricket. Not softball cricket, not windball cricket. And I say hardball because we need to build resilience and competitiveness into our young men and women. And cricket is a professional sport with more opportunities for a professional career than ever before in the history of the sport. It is an Olympic sport. It will be at the next Olympic Games. There's an opportunity for Grenada to have its own Olympic team, cricket team. And so, Mr. Speaker, we should ensure that we invest significantly in cricket, football, all forms of sports, to ensure that we give our young men and women as early as possible an opportunity at professional careers in those areas. So when we are lighting all these playing fields, Mr. Speaker, we are giving families the opportunity to come out and watch their young ones play sport after work, to socialize with them, to get physically fit with them. So there is a plan. That plan, member for the town of St. George, the National Sustainable Development Plan explicitly speaks to those issues. We don't just need the infrastructure. We need to make sure that the clubs, that the primary schools, the secondary schools, that all of that is taking place so that when they move from primary school, they can go to secondary school, and from secondary school to the clubs at the community level so that we can actually use the playing fields that we are putting up all these lights up. And I'm emphasizing this, and I'm making an open call to the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Youth and Sports, and our communities. We don't need to play the cricket at 2 o'clock in the afternoon when nobody's watching the kids, when the sun is hot, because nobody plays professional cricket at those times anymore. Cricket is played under the lights, so we can bring the kids at 5, 6, teachers also have kids, we can get the parents involved, you can have the support, and we can have the games between 6 and 9 when the entire family can come out, support, cheer the kids on, and ensure that they are safe and they are not left with any predators or others who will take advantage of them. And it forces us to be better families in the country and actually pay attention to our children rather than always thinking it's the Child Protection Authority or somebody else who needs to help us with bringing up our children. So, Mr. Speaker, I've just highlighted this. Whether it's medical donations, whether it's support for glasses and medical assistance, support for small businesses, we are doing all of this in St. David's. But I pause here, Mr. Speaker, to say that I may invite the residents and the constituents of St. David's to come down to the Parliament building and to protest on their behalf, because as the Prime Minister and a member of parliament for St. David's, I'm yet to be paid this much talked about $10,000 constituency allowance. And it's not a laughing matter, Mr. Speaker. I want us to appreciate something. I'm the member of parliament for St. David's. I happen to be in the party that won the most seats and was the political leader at the time I was made the Prime Minister. There are three branches of the state: the Parliament, the Executive, and the Judiciary. The Executive is responsible to the Parliament. The Parliament is not responsible to the Executive. So when the Executive passed into law at last budget that a $10,000 constituency allowance should be given to an MP, Mr. Speaker, I don't need to open a bank account to get the $10,000. Whether it's $10,000 in cash, whether it's $10,000 in check, you need to give me the money so that I can represent and help support the people of St. David's. And I can account for the money, whether it's cash, whether it's check, because the same thing everybody else have to do. If I spend it, I get a receipt for it. And I notice there's talk about we appreciate it. I haven't heard a single report as to how this money has been spent by members on the other side, which they got. 10 by 12 is 120,000. We're going into the 15th month. But they ain't come in and say how they spend the money. The Speaker may have it, but account to your people. Explain to them what you've done with the $10,000 that the Parliament passed into law and said you will get it. So for the record, I have not received any funding to support my constituents in St. David. And all of what I've done here is through the kind support and generosity of the private sector, international partners, individuals in the constituency, people in the diaspora, and in many cases, the Prime Minister's salary, which goes directly into supporting the constituents of St. David. So I am saying, Mr. Speaker, since my name is Susu, in my capacity as a member of parliament, if I have to sue the executive to get me $10,000, I will sue the executive on behalf of the members of St. David. And time is money, so I hope there's an interest component of it. I also want to make this point, Mr. Speaker, because this is important. And the member of Carriacou and Petite Martinique will bear me out on this. And I want to repeat this. The executive is accountable to the legislature. The legislature is not accountable to the executive. We have no local government in Grenada, Mr. Speaker. So the executive operates from a centralized bureaucracy. And because of that, in many instances, it doesn't have the capacity, and my friend talked a lot about capacity, to be immediately responsive to the needs of constituents. And I'm saying that's a fact. But we cannot not address it. So when someone's house burns in St. David, they don't run to the Ministry of Social and Community Development. They come to the MP's office. And the Ministry of Social and Community Development door closes at 4. But whether it's 2 a.m. that the house is burning, or 11 p.m., or 10 a.m., fire never seems to happen during the day. It's always in the night. They will call the MP. And you're expected to provide some form of immediate relief, whether it's food, whether it's clothing, whether it's finding a place for them to stay temporarily. And so if the MP offices are not given resources to address some of those needs until we get to the point where there's local government, then we will continue as a state to be non-responsive to some of the immediate needs of our citizens. And this is a serious matter. In fact, sometimes the Ministry of Social, Housing and Community Development does tell them, go and ask the MP. Well, we don't have a $70 million budget. The Ministry of Social, Housing and Community Development has it. So the point I'm making, Mr. Speaker, is that when we talk about strengthening the ability of members of parliament, and I'm not saying on this side, I'm saying all members of parliament, we need to address those issues. So you'd see, Mr. Speaker, that the Minister of Finance wisely proposed that MPs' offices should have a motor vehicle attached to the offices, because you have to run up and down the constituency to meet with the needs of your constituents. But we don't have that currently. So, Mr. Speaker, these are just some of the reasons why we need to strengthen the ability of members of parliament to deliver. I think for the first time, a meaningful salary of $5,000 was offered to members of parliament last year by this government. And it blows my mind that there are members serving on the other side for 20 plus years. Not just the, well, no former opposition leader. The member of parliament for St. Mark, the member of parliament for St. Andrew Southeast, the member of parliament for St. Andrew Northeast is now a double server. Was it that difficult then to recognize that you need to empower MPs? If you don't empower the MPs and you don't give them resources, it affects the quality of persons who put themselves up to serve. Because you see, what will happen, Mr. Speaker, is that you will never be able to be unshackled and to speak truth to power, because you know if one man controls all the resources, and those resources come via the political process, because you don't have a salary as an MP, you don't have a constituency allowance, then you can't say anything. You can't get up and say when you decide not to pay the teachers what you agreed should be paid to them, and they're marching up and down, even though you are a former teacher, even though your children are in Presentation College and have been taught by the same teachers, you cannot stand up as the Minister of Education and do what is right and say this is wrong, I will not stand for it, pay the people, let us stop the dispute, because you know if you do so, you have no salary as an MP, you have no constituency allowance. I didn't have to do this, you know, Mr. Speaker. We could have said, you know what, now the shoe's done, let us squeeze them. Let us do exactly what they would have done if they were in opposition. But we are here because we recognize we need to strengthen democratic governance, and that starts with the parliament, and it starts with the relationship between the constituents and the members of parliament. So, Mr. Speaker, the point made by the Minister of Finance about strengthening governance, particularly at the parliamentary level, is important, and I will say one more point and then move on this. Mr. Speaker, I had no parliamentary office in St. David for months. You know why? I have to go and look for a building as a member of parliament. I should not have to do that. I didn't have to go and look for an office as a prime minister. The ministers don't have to go and look for an office as the ministers. In fact, the Constitution only recognizes two ministerial positions: the Attorney General and the Prime Minister. Everybody else could be minister with a portfolio, or the Prime Minister, if he might, could say no other ministers beyond the AG only. As long as he's assured of the support of the MPs in Parliament, he can run the country. So for months, myself, the Honourable MP for St. Patrick East, for example, had no office. Eventually, I had to find some building in Penmutter Junction, not most suited, go up steps so senior citizens, physically disabled persons are challenged. Downstairs is a supermarket, all kinds of things. This is where people come to see me as the MP. And we pay rent to a private person, and that is the current situation for almost all of the MP offices. Mr. Speaker, if the Parliament has a permanent home, MP's offices should be owned by the state, should be a permanent home, and when you're no longer the MP, you walk out with your personal belongings, and a new MP comes in. So I'm saying from a parliamentary democracy perspective, we go into all our seminars and all these kinds of things. We're learning all about the text and interpretation and so on, but we need democracy in action, not just in theory. So I'm saying there should be permanent, state-owned facilities that can accommodate the elderly, the physically challenged, the vision impaired, that are permanent homes for the parliamentarians. It's not yours, you serve, this is the office. You lose, the incoming MP has the opportunity to do so. It will save a lot of money because you don't have to go and worry about getting the new furniture again every time. You don't have to worry about people, as happened, mixing up the MP's office with their party political offices. Mr. Speaker, even now, as we speak, we have a court case going on. When the former administration decided to contract out the function of the parliament by giving a management contract. And the matter is sub judice, so I wouldn't say more than the fact that the court case is going on. And that's the kind of thing we have to deal with. And I'm saying here, so when I talk about my wanting to ensure that we distinguish between the three arms of the state and the capacities in which we serve, it is to strengthen parliamentary democracy. So those kinds of matters do not occur. Mr. Speaker, I will spend some time now on the various ministerial portfolios, given that I only have, I think, 34 minutes left. I don't know with the debacle that happened here, whether the clock was running or not. So if it was running, I'd expect that I'd be given back my 10 minutes or so. I sat patiently, I did not interrupt because I didn't want to contribute in any way, shape, or form to the bacchanal. Mr. Speaker, I want to start first with the Prime Minister's office, the Ministry of Home Affairs, National Security, Information, Disaster Management. It's a lot, Mr. Speaker. But I want to highlight some of the departments that sometimes get forgotten. The Information Department, the Government Information Service. Mr. Speaker, we've spent some time, it took a little longer than we would have liked, in seeking to reorganize and build the capacity of the Government Information Service, both by bringing new personnel, new and improved equipment, and by enhancing the terms and conditions of service of the employees of the Government Information Service. And I want to commend the Department of Public Administration, P.S. McQuilkin and her team, the Press Secretary, and the team at the Government Information Service for the fantastic job they did during Hurricane Beryl. Mr. Speaker, it wasn't just me living at NADMA headquarters. The Permanent Secretary, Ms. McQuilkin, was living there. The Press Secretary was living there. The Senior Administrative Officer, Ms. Rush, was literally living there. And particularly the men and women who worked for the Government Information Service lived at NADMA headquarters to keep the public informed, both before, during, and after the hurricane. And I think when we talk about unsung heroes, Mr. Speaker, those are the citizens of Grinda who make a difference in the lives of each and every one of us. And I really want to commend them for the tremendous work that they did. The team at NADMA, Mr. Speaker, similarly. And we have to appreciate particularly the team at NADMA and Carriacou, that they had no homes too, Mr. Speaker. And their families too. You know, there's a former commissioner of police that was heavily criticized when he said police officers are human beings too in the aftermath of Hurricane Ivan. But those human beings too stayed the course. They did not abandon their post, and they continued working for the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique in very difficult personal circumstances where they themselves were impacted by the hurricane. And I want to thank them again and thank all of the volunteers who helped with the cleanup process, who donated food, clothing, shelters. There were residents of St. David who went up to support the initiatives and NADMA in Carriacou. It was not always smooth sailing. There were clearly times when everybody's nerves were frayed. It was a very stressful period, but at the end of the day, what it was showing, Mr. Speaker, is the resilience of Grenadians and a recognition that when the chips are down, if we come together, we can ride out the storm. And so when we talk about the resilience, it's not a fanciful word, it is the reality of what many people went through. So the National Disaster Management Agency, Mr. Speaker, we are planning to transition into a full-fledged statutory body. We don't want NADMA to be known as the hurricane response entity. We have to deal with all kinds of disasters. We just had the Dolly C run aground. The potential risk of an environmental and ecological disaster hopefully has been averted. But we need to have an agency that has a wide overarching, preventative, proactive, and fully responsive ability to cope with all types of disasters. We had an enormous drought, 15-year drought in the first half of 2024, and immediately after that we had the hurricane, and a couple of months later we had the flooding. So we are going to transition NADMA into a full-fledged statutory body, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the government printry as well. I want to highlight them because, again, these are aspects of the government that many people don't pay attention to, but without the printry, we can't even pass the laws, Mr. Speaker. And again, when we got into office, the printry was a river. When the rain fell, the sky literally opened over the printry. We were able to quickly address the issue, And in meeting with the staff, they also addressed or raised some of the significant HR challenges that they have. Again, the Department of Public Administration, P.S. McQuilkin in the ministry, and other members of the team have been working on addressing the staff at the Printry, and they are all going to be coming as part of the regularization process. In the meantime, Mr. Speaker, many of them would have benefited from improvements in terms and conditions of service, including salary increases, etc. And so I want to emphasize that these small departments are crucial to the effective functioning of the government. The Immigration Department, Mr. Speaker, again, and we recently opened 6 new kiosks at the airport that allows us to quickly and efficiently process citizens of CARICOM, Grenada, the US, Canada, etc., the EU, by simply having their passports read, and that they would be able to go through quite efficiently. We continue, Mr. Speaker, to drive the digitization and the digitalization of those processes. Similarly, when it comes to things like citizenship, Mr. Speaker, we are transitioning into a digital system so that we can bring significant efficiencies, reduce arbitrary discretion, and ensure that we can have more efficient and timely processing of these services to the public. The Passport Office has always, in recent times, led the way, Mr. Speaker, and we want to ensure that other areas in Home Affairs continue to do so. Mr. Speaker, under Home Affairs, the police and prison obviously take up a significant chunk of the budget. And at the risk of being repetitive, because the Minister of Finance eloquently addressed it in his presentation, I want to highlight, Mr. Speaker, that we don't just focus on concrete and blocks. We focus on people. Because you could build concrete and blocks and end up with white elephants. You can build new infrastructure, you can build new buildings, but if you're not addressing the needs of the people, Mr. Speaker, you're wasting time. And so again, I go back to this book that talks about the deficit myth and the rise of the people's economy. And the people's economy, Mr. Speaker, is about the people. So let's take the Royal Grenada Police Force. Mr. Speaker, I discovered on my entry into policing by a police officer who actually sent the message to me indirectly, that perhaps since 1994, I always like to say that because in 1994 I graduated from Presentation College. Since 1994, the police were waiting on the issue of an adjustment to their pay and grade. Now, what's the excuse for it not being done since 1994? What's the excuse? We indicated that we will address the issue once we got into office. Mr. Speaker, after we concluded negotiations with the various unions, including the Police Welfare Association, we gave a commitment that we would tackle this issue. And it is bittersweet because we are happy that we've been able to tackle this issue, Mr. Speaker. But it is mind-boggling that something as simple as pay and grade would have taken 30 years to be addressed. That's an entire generation of policemen. So if you joined the police in 1994, you're 30, you retired now. And it wasn't addressed. So I want to thank the members of the Police Welfare Association, the Department of Public Administration, the Ministry of National Security for ensuring that we were able to finally bring resolution to this matter. So, Mr. Speaker, an allocation of $6.5 million has been put in the 2025 budget to address this matter. The average constable, which is the lowest rank, the average constable, Mr. Speaker, is going to be benefiting by a pay adjustment in excess of $700 as a result of this. But we didn't do just that, Mr. Speaker. We addressed, I don't know how long the police headquarters has been on the fort. I think even as a little boy, I always wondered how the police headquarters could be on the fort, since it's one way in, one way out in a narrow road. Because to me, if you want to take down High Command, you just have to block the road. But, Mr. Speaker, I want to first thank the Minister for Mobilization, Implementation and Transformation, because he, as part of ensuring that the Tourism Competitiveness Project, which involves the refurbishment of the fort. And obviously the police headquarters could not remain there. It was instrumental in ensuring that the energy needed to get this going happened. I also want to thank the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance for supporting this initiative. Because you know what is usually the easy thing to do, Mr. Speaker? Go and rent a building. That's always the solution. Go and rent a building someplace that's inappropriate. Go and build another temporary wooden building someplace that's inappropriate. But the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance and his team supported the request for us to, in fact, buy a building, refurbish it, and put us in a position to move the police headquarters. So, Mr. Speaker, and I want to say this wasn't budgeted for in 2024. We did the reallocations from the funds, and so I believe the Commissioner of Police and his team are due to have an official handing over ceremony at the end of this month. And so, again, I'm making the point. It is both infrastructure and it is both human resources that will make the police effective. Mr. Speaker, there are basic things we've had to address, from police uniforms for the SSU and the IRU, to the police not even having adequate firearms, even though all them criminals have, to not having the fingerprinting machinery that is required to make sure that all of the burglars that my distinguished colleague represents can be given their fair day in court. All of this, Mr. Speaker, we have invested in the police in 2024. The Grenville Police Station, again, Mr. Speaker, we have moved, we have found the building, we are renovating it so that the police can move. I spoke to the contractor today, and I've asked him to do everything in his power to accelerate the completion of the building so that hopefully by the end of this month as well, this building, at least the major infrastructure work, will be completed. So, Mr. Speaker, we have a lot more to do. Victoria needs addressing. The Coast Guard base is an absolute must for this year. There was a fire there, Mr. Speaker. The base has never properly been addressed since the fire, and the conditions under which the men and women at the Coast Guard operate is not acceptable. We understand that, and we will certainly do everything to accelerate this happening in this budget cycle, Mr. Speaker. The prisons, Mr. Speaker. The Commissioner of Prisons always says, not just this one, but the now-retired commissioner also said that they feel oftentimes that they're treated as a stepchild. I've indicated to the commissioner and his team that they are not stepchildren, and that we appreciate that the prison, in a sense, is the single biggest concentrated security risk to the nation. So we don't underappreciate the significant job that the prison officers do. And so, Mr. Speaker, we have begun and have made some progress in identifying within the existing site a location where a new prison will be constructed. We have done some very conceptual architectural drawings. We are looking at getting to the point where we can have estimates of what this will cost, and then thereafter that obviously we'll have to go through the financing and the procurement process. Mr. Speaker, I want to emphasize these things because, you know, people talk about there's no transformation and all you're talking and etc. I want to start off by saying I'm happy to place on record our appreciation for the governance of the country over the last 40 years and for all those who chose to serve, because it's not an easy thing. And we appreciate that it's our turn to serve, and that we have to learn from the lessons of the past, and that we have to accept things that were good, learn the lessons from them, and continue them. That's easy to do. That doesn't take anything out of anyone, and we are happy to do so. So any project that we met, which we recognize is good and needed to be accelerated or continued, we're happy to do so. That's why the tourism competitive project is good. But we also have to accept, Mr. Speaker, that in some instances, we fell short of where we needed to be. And so when you have a prison system and a building that was built God knows when, 1800s, serving as the prison today, there's no excuse for not having had it addressed earlier. Because as the Honorable MP said, if you left a pregnant treasury, why you wanted the gestation period to be beyond 9 months? Why wasn't the prison addressed? Why wasn't the pay and grade addressed? Why wasn't the police headquarters addressed? Why wasn't the Grenville police station addressed or addressed adequately enough? So what we want is to hear your recommendations, having had the experience, having seen where you had challenges, so that if you genuinely believe in Grenada, we can take the matter forward. So I was happy and heartened to hear the MP for the town of St. George talk about some of the areas where he thinks there could be collaboration, transportation being one of them, and I will come to that. So, Mr. Speaker, all we are saying is, if, as the distinguished foreign minister said, the opposition leader does not want to have an illustrious and distinguished career as opposition leader, then what we need are the actual proposals, the vision, the recommendations for how, where, and when we can actually do things better for the development of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. Not Aseta Rara and Riri. Actual ideas, concepts, because you have the experience, you've had long experience, you've had the benefit of no opposition, 15 seats, you could have changed the constitution, you could have done this, you could have done that, you could have given MPs a salary, you could have given MPs a permanent home, etc., etc. So we know we will not always get it right. We know that there are significant capacity challenges in Grenada, not just in the government, and we have to be able to tackle those things together. So if we want to lift the level of the debate, let us lift the level of the debate. I want to go on record by saying I indicated to the Speaker that I was happy to give some time for the member for St. George Northwest the opportunity to enter the House so that he could have his contribution. It's one thing if he wasn't on the compound, but clearly he was on the compound. Mr. Speaker, I could have predicted this was going to happen to you. I knew this was going to happen, because it is always about moving along and wanting to have the last say and get the attention and distract from the substantive debate. So even though he's conceded and made someone else the opposition leader, the attention must still be on him. And if that can happen, then all hell has to break loose. It's like the little boy who played cricket, and when you bowl him out, he take the stumps and you run up and you say nobody else can. But the cricket pitch was right behind St. Dave's RC School. And I dealt with a lot of fellas who used to be just like that. And as little as I am, if we had to run them down behind the cocoa and get back the stumps and put it back and the game had to continue, the game had to continue. So we had to work on behalf of the people. And I noticed anytime it gets past 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe it's hunger, so some people always want to run home. But as I said the last time, it gets cooler in the night, and that's when your energy should get up, so we could work a little longer on behalf of the people who put us here. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to jump to the issue of transportation. I want to thank P.S. Brown, P.S. Ronda Jones, P.S. Lawrence and Louis, the chairman of the Transport Commission, Attorney at Law Francis Paul, Deputy Chair, Ms. Jasmine Alexander, and the entire Transport Commission team. I want to recognize Senator, former President General of TAU and former President of the Senate, Mr. Chester Humphrey, for being one of the voices that have always talked about the need to address the state of transportation in Grenada. Mr. Speaker, this is a fundamental issue that, if not addressed, is going to significantly stymie the development of Grenada. And I want to start first with a statistic that the MP for the South gave. He said 400, if I'm quoting you wrong, sir, you will correct me, 456 derelict vehicles, I wrote it down, was moved, and that you have another 122 that is tagged. So I want to first start with that, and his plea to our citizens to be responsible. Mr. Speaker, this 456 plus another 122 plus, I'm sure, hundreds more that have become derelict and have to be tagged are simply sitting in Grenada. And it is taxpayers' money that has to be used to pick them up from the roadsides, to pick them up in environmentally sensitive areas, and to be able to treat with them and then get them off the island. I'm making this point to say, Mr. Speaker, that we have gotten to the point where the ecology and the environment and the roads of Grenada cannot sustain the level of private motor vehicles that are on the road. We could hide, we could worry about if we talk the truth, people will vote us out, but I was living before I got into politics. We all live after politics. Mr. Speaker, the truth is, and the Minister of Finance has foreshadowed this in his presentation, we cannot continue with the current transportation policy in Grenada. It is not sustainable. It has already led to significant deterioration of the roadways. We've got significant gridlock, traffic everywhere you go. We have a lot of motor vehicle accidents, and we will end up as a dumping ground, if we're not already that, for fossil fuel vehicles that no longer has any utility to other persons, and they're dumping it here. So, Mr. Speaker, that's one aspect of the policy discussion. So I welcome you sitting on a committee, and I'm happy to invite the former President General to talk about this issue, because it has to be addressed. We're either going to have to say 1 vehicle per household, or you can't import vehicles 5 years and under, or maybe even 3 years and under. Older. Or we're going to have to find some other way, which is improving the public transportation system. So we will start first with improving the transportation system. And I want to commend the team for the launch of the school bus pilot. And Mr. Speaker, obviously allocations have been made to support this, and I want to emphasize it's a pilot. So while it is a pilot, it is free. But for it to be sustainable, it has to be financed and it has to be paid for. And I just want to give some statistics about the current transportation system in the country, Mr. Speaker, so we understand what we are facing. If I can find it. If you can bear with me, Mr. All right, well, I will have to go on memory, and if I'm wrong, I'll ask the Permanent Secretary to correct me. I believe there is a total of 1,563 registered buses in Grenada, serving 22 zones. Of these 22 zones, 9 are underserved, meaning you have very little buses actually plying those routes. And I'm sure we know some of those. The Western Zone, from St. Patrick, entire Western Zone is a challenge. So, Mr. Speaker, we have approximately 22,000 students going to school. That's 20% of the population. And we have a situation where obviously the bus fare for students is less than for adults. But it's the same cost of carrying a student as it is carrying an adult. It's the same cost for the bus operator. So a lot of our bus operators simply make the business decision that I need the extra dollar, so they don't take the students. Now, in fairness to them, we are not paying their loans. So it's easy to moralize and say, well, you're a wicked boss man, you're leaving the children and you're going after the adults. But the truth is, if they can't pay the loan at the end of the month, the bank ain't telling you you're a kind boss man because you're carrying children, so I'm giving you extra month or extra 2 months. They want their money. So we have to find the balance, Mr. Speaker, and hence the reason for the school pilot. Because we recognize that it is not fair for the busmen who have, for the last 10 years or so, had to endure the same bus price, while at the same time dealing with all of the rising costs and the challenge that a lot of the buses that we have in Grenada are obsolete, Mr. Speaker. They are not making them anymore. And so, Mr. Speaker, you will see that the government has instituted a subsidy policy via rebate to provide some relief to the bus operators, rather than agreeing to their requests to increase bus fares, because we recognize that we simply can't afford at this point in time for people to pay more for transportation. So we are going to continue working with them to ensure that we can address this issue. As we speak, Mr. Speaker, we are actively pursuing negotiations with a partner to secure as much as 50 electric buses, hopefully coaster size, that we'll be able to deploy into the school bus program as soon as the pilot is finished. And obviously we are looking at electric buses because they are cheaper to maintain. You don't have a combustible engine that has all these parts, and obviously when they park to the schools and so on, they can be charged. We do recognize, however, that we have to accelerate renewables on the grid because if you are charging an electric bus via a diesel generating engine, then you are essentially just going around in circles. So, Mr. Speaker, the transportation sector is something that we significantly wish to pursue from a public transportation perspective in conjunction. I want to make this clear. The government is not seeking to replace the private bus owners. We are seeking to collaborate with them, to support them, and to help them to become, frankly, more business-oriented. Because I've said to a lot of them, you can drive bus all your life. If you don't have insurance, NIS, if you don't have a savings plan, if you don't have a retirement plan, when you're back giveaway and you can't sit on the bus and you turn 60 or 70, you're coming back to the government and ask for seed or ask for some kind of assistance. So we need to get them to the point where they understand that they have to run a business as well, that they have to have health insurance, that they have to have pension, retirement, savings schemes. Right? That if they in fact form a cooperative, as I've been advocating for them to do, it puts them in a position to negotiate with the government better, to even get joint services in terms of mechanics and the servicing and joint procurement of parts and all those kinds of things. So there's a lot of work to be done, and we are not here to replace them or compete with them. We don't have the capacity, but we are seeking to collaborate with them to make sure that we can make this a unique and successful pilot for the people of Grenada. Mr. Speaker, if I may move quickly to the Department of Public Administration. And again, I want to thank the team, because, Mr. Speaker, you know, we've had this significant disruption of the hurricane, yet still some of the significant accomplishments that we set up have been met by the Department of Public Administration. We were able to pass the new Contributory Pension Act. Now, Mr. Speaker, some never thought it would happen, because they think we operate as the MP said, where they come and they do a busy piece of road for you just before elections, and then they run away. They did the same thing, you know. They in 2013 or 2018, they said they would do all kinds of things for the public servants, etc. After the elections, they went back to challenging the court cases, to not wanting to pay the pension, etc. So I want to emphasize that the new Contributory Pension Act, Mr. Speaker, is a historic piece of legislation. And I would just say, since the National Insurance Act, it is perhaps the most single important legislation for pension reform in the history of Grenada since the National Insurance Scheme was introduced. And as we said, it is designed not just for public sector workers, it allows statutory bodies to come on, and eventually we believe it will allow private employers who are either too small or don't have the scale to have their own private pension plans to be able to join this plan. And as we said, pensions are a form of saving. It's an opportunity for the funds to be invested and to drive economic activity and to drive employment as well. So again, I want to commend the team for being able to accomplish this. But this is linked, Mr. Speaker, to the regularization process. And I just want to emphasize the numbers again, because you see, when people want to make mischief, they're going around and saying, you say a stroke a pen, you can regularize everybody, you stroke a pen, regularize everybody. I never said that. I said there should be one public service. And I will say it again, there should be one public service. You can't have people sitting side by side on radically different terms and conditions of employment and expect them to perform the same. So, Mr. Speaker, we don't have to hide or not be committed to the issues we said we would accomplish. And I just want to emphasize the numbers in terms of the pension regularization, Mr. Speaker. So let me just simply get it here again. You have to repeat things, lest people forget. So first I will start by saying we paid in excess of $75.1 million in retroactive pensions. And everyone who since retired then now have their pensions. If you look, Mr. Speaker, at the expenditure, you would see that pension makes up about 7% of the total expenditure for this budget, for the proposals for 2026 and 2027. So, Mr. Speaker, the public sector regularization process has led to 455 officers being confirmed. Let me repeat that, 455 officers. Phase 2 is targeting 1,262 officers who are holding Public Service Commission contracts, Government of Grenada contracts, ministry letters, and daily paid instruments. And I want to emphasize this. You heard the terms Government of Grenada contracts, ministry letters, daily paid instruments. Many of these people, Mr. Speaker, could not even enter the door of a financial institution, whether it's a credit union or government, with these instruments. So they've been stuck, not being able to utilize their labor to advance themselves. They can't borrow, they can't get credit card, they can't get layaway plan, because no one is assured that you have continuity of employment. And this has gone on for years. And the regularization is seeking to address that, Mr. Speaker. So that group of the 1,262 will be 1,100 officers. There is an additional 224 teachers who have been processed for regularization at the end of this month. If there's a glitch in the system and teachers ain't getting paid, all kind of melee in town, but not one word about the fact that the regularization process is taking place. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to emphasize that there is still another 3,316 workers who are holding contracts for service and who are labeled as Imani trainees who are to be regularized by December of 2025. And a sum of $22.7 million has been budgeted to cover the additional cost of the regularization exercise. Let me repeat that. A sum of $22.7 million has been allocated to deal with this issue. So if there's a deficit, who are we giving the money? The citizens of Grenada. You want a rich government and poor people, or you want rich people and a poor government? So, Mr. Speaker, when you talk about deficit, this is a simple thing, you know. If the government is collecting less from its taxpayers and spending more on them, it is for the benefit of the people. It's that simple. So we have to appreciate, Mr. Speaker, when I talk about putting people first, and when I say this is the people's economy, everybody's talking about project, project, project. Concrete, concrete, concrete. Steel, steel, steel. We are investing in our people. And when they have the money, it is the same economy they come back and spend it. It is the same goods and services they're buying. It is the same VAT they're paying. It is the same income tax, the same property tax, and the government getting back the revenue, and the economy grows. So, Mr. Speaker, we are proud of the fact that we've taken the time to address some of these most difficult issues in the public service. Because we recognize that somebody has to put up the white flag and somebody has to extend the olive branch if we are going to improve the working relationship between the policy makers and the public servants. But having said that, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to say it openly, we also need our public servants to become more productive. And we also need our workers in the country to become more productive. We are not going to be able to grow this society by saying, government, give me things. Because the government has to get it from somebody. And the only people they could get it from is the people who are working and the people who are productive. And there's no way around this issue. We have to become more productive. We have to learn to use technology. We have to learn to skill, reskill, and take on the skills in the areas where there are actual opportunities. Too many of us like to dictate the work we want, rather than the work that is available. And we have to start somewhere. And I'm also calling on our partners, the unions, to also recognize this. So, Mr. Speaker, we are spending significant sums on our workers. The $22.7 million budgeted for the regularization, the $6.5 million plus for the police pay and grade, the pensions, we can go on and on, but we have to improve our service delivery to our citizens, and we must become more productive. Mr. Speaker, might I inquire as to how much more time I have? Might I inquire as to how much more time I have?
Clock, please advise. Tell the clock, please advise of time. He's keeping the time.
What? That's of my original allotment? Yeah. Okay, sir, thank you. 1:45. All right, thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I may turn to the issue of infrastructure, public utilities. And I will start with the roads, Mr. Speaker, because, you know, you don't have to bring a Jamaican here to say the roads are smooth. We know the roads are not smooth. We know that they need attending to. But before we fix the problem, we also have to understand why we are where we are. And so it is important for me as the Minister for Infrastructure to give some context on this issue. It's a capacity issue, as the member for the town of St. George pointed out. And it's not so much a government capacity issue because the government doesn't wish itself to get involved in road construction. We happily would have the private sector take on most of this. But I want to just give 2 examples of what we are dealing with. We wish to have the Trublu Road resurfaced. It started in May or June of last year. It hasn't completed as yet. It's not the government doing the work, it's a contractor. And I'm not picking a fight with the contractor, but I'm saying openly I'm disappointed with the pace of the work. That contractor controls the quarry. And in simple terms, the quarry is where we get the stones, the base material that is needed to go on the road itself, and the material that is needed to mix the asphalt so that we get asphalt. So this is not a capacity, this is not an issue about money, about whether the government is paying the contractor or not. The money is there. It's an issue about the contractor's capacity. And I'm saying this is a contractor of a monopoly on the single quarry that we're operating in Mount Hartman. And this is the same contractor who, the name has a different name now, but this is the same contractor who essentially had a monopoly on road construction, God knows, for the last 30 years or so, CCC or CCCI, whatever name you want to call them. Which meant that very few other private persons invested in the capacity to build and construct roads in Grenada. That is the uncontroverted facts. So they've got the contract to redo the Trublu Road. It is significantly delayed. I'm not going to pull a President Orphan Ali because I might be a lot more indecent than he was. It is the same contractor who has the contract for less than a mile of road between the cliff and Woodlands. That project started in April. There will always be all kinds of excuses, whether it's gravel and concrete, whether it's something at the port. The fact is the pace of the work is completely unsatisfactory. The permanent secretary in the Ministry of Infrastructure, the chief technical officer, the consultant, the advisor in the ministry, I've made it clear to them that the pace has to be picked up significantly this month or there will be consequences. But I want to point out something. The contractor has a monopoly on the quarry and therefore a monopoly on asphalt supply. And that is the same contractor that we have to rely on to provide asphalt to the Ministry of Infrastructure to fix all of the potholes we have around the country. We simply do not have asphalt. But we are not just complaining. We've invited other private sector persons to get involved. And so you would see that there's a plant that has been set up in Boucherjou. We are waiting on 2 other parts. It's a private sector plant. We have simply, in an attempt to get this matter dealt with, offered a space to put a plant. We were originally trying to get the plant to Pearls. And this is where we have to understand how the challenges we have with our infrastructure. The plant couldn't pass through the Paradise Bridge because it's too large. And the only other attempt to get it, you'd have to barge it around Telescope, which then creates all kinds of safety challenges. So the plant had to sit in Lagoon Road for 2 months until we figured out whether there was sufficient space at Boucherjou. Hopefully, the parts come soon and we are good. But when you have the plant, now you need the aggregates. Who controls the aggregates? A competitor. So you'll have issues about whether you'll even get the aggregates and the price at which you'll get it. So, Mr. Speaker, if that's the case, we will have to import the aggregates. Now, to import aggregates in large enough quantities to make a difference, if it has to come to the port of St. George, we got problems, because then you'll have to have huge trucks hauling this to get to Boucherjou. Traffic and environmental challenges. It therefore means, Mr. Speaker, we have to find a way to barge this via sea up to the Boucherjou area. So a lot of us talk and like to make mischief, and I'm going to segue a little. Because road construction is not cutting checks to farmers. It is complex, difficult, dirty work. You need to import the bitumen. The contractor is not importing bitumen in quantities that allows us to have any sustained asphalt. It may have cash flow problems, I don't know. We don't have control over this. We have talked to the ministry about how we now import bitumen ourselves to see how we can help the contractor to be able to address this issue. And that's just 2 little roads, you know. We now need to resurface the entire Eastern Main Road from Point Salines Airport, Morris Bishop International Airport, to the Sugar Mill Roundabout, from the Sugar Mill Roundabout to the Woodlands Junction, or what is sometimes called Stinky Bridge. The Woburn Road is probably going to have to get some work after the heavy traffic that is enduring because of the stoppage of the access to the roads from Woburn. If you take from the cliff all the way to Egmont Junction, it's as bumpy as they come. And that's just the eastern branch. We ain't talking about Grandlands Main Road, which needs to be completely resurfaced. But there are other complications, Mr. Speaker. We wanted to resurface Grandlands since last year. But we have the Southern Water and Sewage Project from the UK SIF, which means we are going to have to run significant new water pipe infrastructure, and unfortunately, there are no easements. We know a lot of these homes are literally in the road, and so the pipes have to be run in the road. I think we would all understand that if we resurfaced the road last year, and then starting April or May this year, we see tractors coming and digging and ripping up half of the road to lay pipes, everybody go ask if we mad and if we can't plan. So to some extent, Mr. Speaker, we have to await this project. We had a debriefing yesterday. We are hoping that construction, as in the actual laying of the pipes, could start in April. This is a 9-month project. So there's going to be significant inconvenience on the Grandlands Main Road if this starts in April for the next 9 to 10 months before we can resurface the entire road. We are hoping, nonetheless, that we can get the Morris Bishop to Sugar Mill part done and the Sugar Mill to Woodlands area done. The Mabuya area in St. John, we've talked about it. Now that we've completed the Molyneux Bridge, it still has to be properly surfaced, and the reason it's not properly surfaced again is because we don't have asphalt. So we can do little coal mix in pearls, but that is not adequate for the main roads in particular. So, Mr. Speaker, what we are facing here, as alluded to by my friend, is significant capacity issues. Having said that, we intend to find innovative ways to address this issue. So, working with the Ministry of Finance, we have agreed that we will put out expressions of interest, inviting private persons to express interest in designing, building, maintaining, and I want to add this maintenance part, because what has happened in the past, Mr. Speaker, is people have gotten contracts for the roads, and there is no maintenance component of it, and then financing. So let me repeat that. We are going to ask persons to express interest in financing the road construction, designing it, building it, and maintaining it. Why financing? Because, Mr. Speaker, the budget doesn't even account for the cost of what will be involved in repairing our roads. The Woburn to Cliff piece alone is about 20 million. So, by mere deduction, to rip the road up, build sidewalks, and get us up to, say, Egmont Point, is going to run us into $100 million. So we are going to say to someone, if you bring your financing, and the terms are favorable, and we go through a procurement process, then we would ask you to go. And for us to get there, and get there in a quick enough time, Mr. Speaker, as I said, there are things we are going to have to do. It means we are looking right now at reopening the telescope quarry, because we simply cannot allow the state to be held ransom by an inefficient or ineffective quarry at Mount Atma. So you would also notice, Mr. Speaker, that there was a lot of talk about a site in Woodford, in St. John. And all kinds of attempts were being made to somehow associate the MP for St. John with the issue, as if she has land in Woodford and if she's setting up a cement plant or asphalt plant in Woodford. It's private property, Mr. Speaker, where a private investor is seeking to invest in the very capacity that we don't have on island to be addressed issues like road construction. A lot of noise was made. The MP, to her credit, went to a town hall or village meeting organized by concerned citizens. The advisor in the ministry, as well as the PS in the Ministry of Infrastructure, went to hear the concerns of the persons. The private owner's representative was present, and I believe a meaningful and purposeful and sensible discussions was had. We understand that the environmental impact assessment is being done, and that it will be delivered to the Planning and Development Authority, that the commissioning of the site will not occur until there is final approval by the Planning and Development Authority. But I'm saying we are too quick often to just look to Joke Movie and Bacchanal and all kind of movie lang when we need the capacity in the country to address the infrastructure challenges. So we also have a bridges package, Mr. Speaker, that we need to address in infrastructure. because I just talked about Paradise Bridge as an example. You have bridges that simply can't accommodate the 40 and 20-foot containers or the larger pieces of equipment, or frankly, 2 regular vehicles on our road. So there's also that package. MP for the town of St. George, let me just say, Mr. Speaker, I will ask now if I could have an extra 10 or 15 minutes. This whole thing threw me off. So I see it's 1:40. I'm not sure when my time is supposed to end because I haven't heard a bell ring. I know normally we have a ring 10 minutes before the due time. So would I be permitted to go until...
Honorable Prime Minister, you have 3 minutes left on your appointed time. I now grant you additional 10 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate it.
All right.
So the River Road issue, Mr. Speaker. I've given instructions that the road should be paved at a minimum. But, Mr. Speaker, building the bridge isn't going to stop the flooding. And I suspect that with the wall that was built, there's water now not just coming from the river, but from all of the houses and so on that is ending up in the road as well. And so, Mr. Speaker, we are seeking to get expert advice to see what can be done to the river upstream, to either create larger catchment basin areas so that we could slow down the velocity of the water and the pace at which it comes down. Because I assume that the original intent was to address the flooding and not just build concrete structures. So we have to address this issue upstream to at least increase the mitigation measures up there, especially in light of the damage done to the forest by Hurricane Beryl, to address the flooding. So at a minimum, the roads certainly should be paved, but we need to get the asphalt to do so. I will admit we've had some back and forth and some potential indecisiveness over the bridges because originally of the cost of the concrete bridges, and we were looking to see whether steel bridges would work. The expert advice is that the road would have to be lifted much, much higher to accommodate the steel bridges. So in light of that, we are likely going to have to go back to concrete bridges and to make sure whether we need 2 or we need 1 to make a firm determination of that, so that at least I think the one up at Steel's entrance will definitely have to be lifted and replaced. So that is where we are, MP. I will certainly try my best to keep you abreast, but I certainly think that the road has to be addressed just as how we have to address some of the other concerns in the road. So, Mr. Speaker, I also just want to emphasize government buildings. Because we still are significantly challenged with the state of government buildings and the maintenance of them. In 2024, we contracted out the maintenance of schools to the Ministry of Education so that you have contractors assigned to districts and particular schools. So when there are issues in the schools for routine maintenance, preventative maintenance, the principals and so on together with the supervisors can work on this directly, because the Ministry of Infrastructure simply doesn't have the capacity to do it. We are subject to further discussions, hoping to do the same for a number of other government buildings outside of the immediate town center of St. George. So whether it's things like magistrates' courts, police stations, if we don't have these preventative maintenance being done, the buildings deteriorate very fast, and then people are made to sit in highly uncomfortable, to work in highly uncomfortable and oftentimes unsanitary and unhealthy conditions. Mold being one of the major challenges that a lot of buildings face. We have, Mr. Speaker, agreed to take the Financial Complex Limited and to rename it as the Facilities, I have to recall the proper name. I think it's the Facilities, I will call it the Facilities Management Company for now, and bring it under the Ministry of Infrastructure, because it was previously under the Ministry of Finance, and give it a mandate to maintain certain pre-agreed government buildings to make sure that they can continue to build their capacity and respond faster, rather than having them trying to do everything. They were trying to do police stations, schools, central government buildings, and they were not being effective, and they did not have the resources necessary to do all of that. So that is one of the other issues that we have to address on the Ministry of Infrastructure. I do need to repeat, because I think both the MP for St. George Northwest highlighted the schools that we expect to start. Sorry, St. George, no, the MP, Ron Redhead, sorry, St. George Northeast, what did I say? Northwest, well, there are some things you have in common, so we may have to run you over there. You used to play cricket? You had to learn to play cricket first. So, and you're in Boundary. And the last time I had some fellas was trying to move some fellas over from Northwest into Northeast to try and see if they could get help. So Mr. Speaker, I want to emphasize a couple of points that I heard today. One of which was the question of over-reliance on the Citizenship by Investment program as part of the financing of the budget. We wish to emphasize, Mr. Speaker, that we are not over-reliant on investment migration receipts or citizenship by investment receipts. Prior to what I call the Russian rush, which is 2023 and 2024, CBI receipts were roughly around 12% of the total receipts received by the government. Because of the sanctions and the outbreak of the Ukraine war, of course, there was a surge of persons of Russian origin seeking citizenship under the investment migration program. And when we announced that we were stopping, that probably accelerated people rushing. And so for 2023 and 2024, there would have been an above average revenue intake almost exclusively as a result of that Russian rush. And the Russian rush has come to an end. And so, Mr. Speaker, you will see that for this year and for the next 3 years as part of the medium-term project, that we expect that investment migration receipts will go back to around 12%. And therefore, that is factored into the budget. So there is really no over-reliance on investment migration revenue. But I also want to emphasize the point presented by the Minister of Finance that we are seeking to tweak the investment migration program so that more local Grenadian developers and citizens can get involved in the project by reducing the fees and so on associated with approved project status, etc., so that we can try and ensure that local Grenadians can use this as an opportunity to get financing to support their own projects. So I wanted to make that point because I think if left unanswered, it may give the wrong impression that somehow we are over-reliant on the investment migration program. The Minister of Finance in his speech, I think, adequately addressed how we are seeking to strengthen the program at this time. I also wish to just briefly speak, Mr. Speaker, about healthcare, because I think a number of comments were made about healthcare, and the Minister of Health obviously is not in a position to respond. Conversations about the NHI and GPA and why don't we the reference to PAHO and so on, the statutorization of the hospitals. Mr. Speaker, I want to point out something. And the Minister of Health was honest by saying this. The challenges in our healthcare system are not going to be solved overnight. We accept that. We have a human resource capacity issue, as in inadequate numbers. And therefore means we'll have to train up and educate more persons to actually see the healthcare sector as a career. That's one. Two, the management structure of the hospitals and the Ministry of Health has to change. There is simply no accountability. That's the truth. And people have to become accountable. And people have to understand that there's nothing to be feared from becoming accountable. If there's an allegation that someone dies at the hospital, there's no reason to panic. But we need to know what happened, so that if something went awry, the next time it can be corrected. And this is simple and straightforward. The medical professionals legislation requires doctors, for example, to have health insurance. There's a reason for that. It recognizes that, like any other profession, you may sometimes fall below the standard expected. That is why you have the insurance. So if you're carrying out surgery, Mr. Speaker, and you had 14 needles, you know at the end of the surgery, you have to account for the 14 needles. So if when the surgery is finished, and you're counting, and you get 12 needles, it means there's a high probability that 2 of the needles are in the patient. Now, if you don't tell the patient, we can't find 2 of the needles because there's a lot of blood or whatever, and the patient goes home, and then while sitting to urinate, a needle drops out of her. What do you think the patient is going to do? I'm not making up this story. Now, this may sound incredible, but this is quite routine in surgeries. It is routine. Needles are left, gauze is left, all kinds of things. That is why you have the insurance. That is why you have protocols, because surgeries are high pressure. That's why it's not anybody who becomes a surgeon. That's why they say the surgeons of the gods are the gods of the medical profession. But the point I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, you have to professionalize it. You have to be accountable. You have to have your protocols. We need to make sure we're following our protocols. So if something goes wrong, it's not because we want to prevent the doctor from working again or anything like that. We want to improve the systems. We want to know where we're going wrong. But if people are hiding the files, or they don't want to talk, or they're pretending that nothing goes wrong when surgery is happening, we are not going to have an improvement in our outcomes at the hospitals, and the reputation of all of us and of Grenada is not going to improve. So the hospitals or medical centers have to become accountable. We have to understand that when we're asking to shine light, when we're asking for information, is to improve. And so when Mount Sinai would have done the gap assessment, it is to ensure that we begin to address those issues. So for example, if you have to reduce the rates of transmission of diseases within the hospitals, and there's a protocol for washing your hands, and you're not washing your hands, we need to know that. So somebody could say, wash your hands. If there's a protocol for how you dress or how you put on the gown, we need to know that is happening. If there's a protocol for how you inform patients or loved ones of the death of the passing, we need to know those things are happening. So, Mr. Speaker, these challenges and the culture is something that requires disruption. We are not going to change it by just simply talking. It's not just about money, it's about the management culture, it's about the accountability, it's about the relationship between the Ministry of Health and our hospitals. And the structure, and if the structure is not working, we have to be able to address it. So the gap assessment by Mount Sinai and the work being done by the Ministry of Health and the Project Polaris team, which is the team that is leading the work on the new hospital, is designed to address the very issue that the Honorable MP raised. We know that building a new hospital, the structure, isn't going to improve healthcare in and of itself. The culture, the management practice, all of those things are what we are working on now, so that when we get to the new hospital, we have put all of those things in place. And so I want to emphasize that. But having said that, Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance and his team still retain the $500 monthly additional payment to our nurses and the $1,000 additional monthly payment to our doctors, and I want to commend him and the team for doing so. So, Mr. Speaker, National Health Insurance, I just quickly wanted to say this. The Cabinet took the decision to terminate the contract with JIPA for the simple reason that we were not satisfied that we were getting value for money. And for the record, when we got into office, JIPA's contract with the government was in abeyance. We, after several rounds of discussions and negotiations, decided to give them a second chance at this, and so we amended the contract and re-signed. Having done so, and after months of looking at the progress, we were not satisfied that we were going to get a system that was going to actually lead to the establishment of national health insurance that was suited to Grenada. And so we terminated the contract. The Minister of Health, I believe, is walking back in. The University of the West Indies did enormous work on this for us before. We are not throwing out the baby with the bathwater. We intend to go back to the University of the West Indies and their consultants to help us in actually implementing the national health insurance, which is going to be a key part of the transformation in healthcare when we get to the construction and operationalizing of the new hospital. And similarly, Mr. Speaker, the question of the statutorization of the hospital. All of these are pieces that are linked to us getting to the point where we can begin to transform the healthcare. I want to finally say we view healthcare as an industry and an opportunity for Grenadians to actually be employed, to have careers in, and to improve our healthcare in the meantime. So, is that the end, Mr. Speaker, or just a warning? All right. So, in light of that, Mr. Speaker, I just want to emphasize that the development of our country, and I want to thank you for allowing me to wrap up, Mr. Speaker, the development of our country is not about things, it is about the people. And you will have no development if the people do not pursue knowledge. There is no country, small, big, intermediate, medium, that has become successful if you do not have a knowledge-based society. And although we didn't get a chance to talk about education, the Minister of Education is going to do so. If we do not pursue knowledge, even in the most religious of societies, even those that are run by a theocracy, they pursue knowledge. If as a people we do not pursue knowledge, we are not going to grow and develop, and that means knowledge in all forms. And so when we emphasize things like education and healthcare, and the pensions and our people, it is because we want to incentivize them. When we talk about ensuring that people have the opportunity for training and skills training and the cybersecurity and the coding and the centers of excellence for skills, it is because we recognize, Mr. Speaker, that if we don't encourage our people to pursue knowledge and to pursue their own development, you could vote me in, you could vote somebody else in, you could vote somebody else in, your life will not change or improve because government could only do so much. So I want to emphasize, Mr. Speaker, that we owe it to speak the truth, particularly to young Grenadians, that you got to pursue knowledge, you have to work hard, and you have to care about your community if you want to ensure that this country continues to rise. And so to the people of Carriacou and Petite Martinique in particular, and those impacted by Hurricane Beryl, rest assured that we will continue to support and encourage you to continue rising. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Prime Minister. And this concludes the debate before us. I now put the question. Honorable members, whereas it is necessary to provide for the services of the State of Grenada for the year 2025 by means of an Appropriation Act, be it resolved that the estimates of revenue and expenditure for the fiscal year 1st January 2025 to 31st December 2025 be approved. All those of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it. Maybe I see it. Minister for Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to move the resolution for the purpose of Section 9(5) of the Fiscal Revision Act number 11 of 2023. Whereas Section 9 of the Fiscal Revision Act number 11 of 2023, hereinafter referred to as the Act, provides that the minister may, subject to negative resolution, suspend the public debt target and primary balance rule under Section 8 of the Act at any time during a fiscal year where any one or more of the events specified in Section 9(1) A, B, or C occurs, if the minister determines that implementation of the public debt target and primary balance rule in the fiscal year would be unduly harmful to the public finance and macroeconomic or financial stability. And whereas on the 1st of July 2024, Hurricane Beryl devastated parts of the state of Grenada, and whereas on the first day of July 2024, the Prime Minister declared a disaster by statutory rules and order number 21 of 2024, made pursuant to Section 55(1) of the Disaster Management Act number 2 of 2023. And whereas the declaration constituted a major economic shock within the meaning of Section 9 of the Act, and whereas it was prudent that the minister exercises power under Section 9(1) to suspend by order the public debt target and primary balance rule under Section 8 of the Act. And whereas, by virtue of the fiscal reason suspension of the public debt target and primary balance rule, Order SR number 25 of 2024, the public debt target and primary balance rule under Section 8 of the Act was suspended for the fiscal year ending 31st day of December 2024. And whereas the fiscal resilience suspension of the public debt target and primary balance rule under Section SR 25 of 2024 was accompanied by memorandum required pursuant Section 9(2) of the Act. And whereas Section 9(5)(b) of the Act further provides that if the minister is satisfied that the resumption of the application of the public debt target and primary balance rule suspended by the order under subsection 1 would be unduly harmful to the public finance and macroeconomic or finance stability, the minister may extend the period of the order under subsection 1 by a second or subsequent order subject to affirmative resolution made concurrently with presentation of the national budget for the new fiscal year. And whereas the minister is satisfied that a resumption of the application of the public debt target and primary balance rule that was suspended by the fiscal resilience suspension of the public debt target and primary balance rule, Order SR number 25 of 24, would be unduly harmful to the public finance and macroeconomic or financial stability. And whereas the expedient that the fiscal resilience suspension of the public debt target and primary balance rule, extension Order 25, which seeks to extend the suspension of the requirements referred to in Section 8 of the Act for a further period of 1 fiscal year to be approved by the House of Representatives. Now therefore be it resolved that pursuant to Section 9(5) of the Act, the fiscal resilience suspension of the public debt target and primary balance rule, extension Order 25, as set out in the schedule to this resolution, is hereby approved by the House of Representatives.
Honorable members, resolution for the purposes of Section 9, subsection 5 of the Fiscal Resilience Act, number 11 of 2023. Whereas Section 9, subsection 1 of the Fiscal Resilience Act, number 11 of 2023, hereinafter referred to as the Act, provides that the minister may, subject to negative resolution, suspend the public debt target and primary balance rule under Section 8 of the Act at any time during the fiscal year where any one or more of the events specified in Section 9 subsection 1 bullet A, B, or C occurs, if the minister determines that the implementation of the public debt target and primary balance rule in the fiscal year would be unduly harmful to the public finances and microeconomics or financial stability. And whereas on the first day of July 2024, Hurricane Beryl devastated parts of the state of Grenada, and whereas on the first day of July 2024, the Prime Minister declared a disaster by statutory rules and Order number 21 of 2024, made pursuant to Section 55, subsection 1 of the Disaster Management Act number 2 of 2023. And whereas that declaration constituted a major economic shock within the meaning of Section 9, subsection 1 of the Act, and whereas it was prudent that the minister exercises power under Section 9(1) to suspend by order the public debt target and primary balance rule under Section 8 of the Act, and whereas by virtue of the fiscal resilience, suspension of the public debt target and primary balance rule, Order SRO number 25 of 2024, the public debt target and primary balance rule under Section 8 of the Act was suspended for the fiscal year ending on the 31st day of December 2024. And whereas the fiscal resilience suspension of the public debt target and primary balance rule Order SRO number 25 of 2024, was accompanied by the memorandum required pursuant to Section 9, subsection 2 of the Act. And whereas Section 95, subsection B of the Act further provides that if the minister is satisfied that the resumption of the application of the public debt target and primary balance rule suspended by an order under subsection 1 would be unduly harmful to the public finances and microeconomics of financial stability, the minister may extend the period for the order under subsection 1 by a second or subsequent order subject to affirmative resolution made concurrently with the presentation of the national budget for the new fiscal year. And whereas the minister is satisfied that the resumption of the application of the public debt target and the primary balance rule that was suspended by the fiscal resilience suspension of the public debt target and primary balance rule, Order SRO number 25 of 2024 would be unduly harmful to the public finances and microeconomic of financial stability. And whereas it is expedient that the fiscal resilience, suspension of the public debt target and primary balance rule, Extension Order 2025, which seeks to extend the suspension of the requirements referred to in Section A of the Act for a further period of 1 fiscal year, be it approved by the House of Representatives. Now, therefore, be it resolved that pursuant to Section 9(5) of the Act, the fiscal resilience suspension of the public debt target primary balance rule, Extension Order 2025, as set out in the schedule to this resolution, is hereby approved by the House of Representatives. Now, therefore, members, the question is, now, therefore, be it resolved that pursuant to subsection 9(5) of the Act, the fiscal resilience, suspension of the public debt target and primary balance rule, Extension Order 2025, as set out in the schedule to this resolution, is hereby approved by the House of Representatives. Those with that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it.
Item 15, bills.
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to introduce for its first reading a bill for an act shortly entitled Appropriation 2025 Bill 2025.
The bill which seeks to make provisions for the appropriation of a sum not exceeding $1,912,872,014 Eastern Caribbean dollars to the service of the State of Grenada for the period January 1st to December 31st, 2025, shortly entitled Appropriation 2025 Bill 2025.
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the relevant standing order be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all the stages at this sitting.
Honourable members, the question is that the relevant standing order of the House be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all stages at this sitting. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it. I think the ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the second reading of the bill.
Honourable members, the question is that the bill be read a second time. Honourable members, the question is that the bill be read a second time. Those of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Appropriation 2025, Bill 2025. Mr. Speaker, this particular bill contains 2 clauses and 1 schedule. This bill, Mr. Speaker, seeks to make appropriation for expenses of the state of Grenada for the period 1st January to 31st December 2025. Mr. Speaker, to the tune of $1,912,872,014. Mr. Speaker, in the schedule, it provides a detailed list of the various votes and the amounts allocated under recurrent and capital expenses. And so, Mr. Speaker, I draw attention to the schedule and I invite any comments on the bill. Thank you. Well, Mr. Speaker, I want to put it this way. Given the fact that we have had
Voted on it.
significant discussions on the motion over the past couple of days, it means that we would have captured the essence of this bill, because this bill seeks to cement the discussions that happened over the past 2 days, and therefore I wish not to prolong the discussion on this particular item because of the substantive debate we've had over the past couple of days. Okay.
Honourable Member, just approach the bench. Please approach the bench. Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I therefore beg to move that the House resolves itself into a committee of the whole House to consider this bill clause by clause. Thank you.
Honourable members, the question is that this Honourable House resolve itself into a committee of the whole House to consider the bill clause by clause. All those of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it. This Honourable House is now in committee.
Clause 2, appropriation.
Honourable members, the question is that clause 2 forms part of the bill. Those of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it.
Schedule.
Honourable members, the question is that schedule forms part of the bill. Those of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it.
Clause 1, short title.
Honourable members, the question is that clause 1 forms part of the bill. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that the House resumes and that the chairman of the committee report progress on the bill.
Honourable members, the question is that the House resumes and the chairman of the committee reports progress on the bill. Those of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it. Right Honorable House now resumes. Honorable members, I have to report that the bill was considered by a committee of the whole House and passed without amendment. Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the chairman's report be adopted.
Honorable members, the question is that the chairman's report be adopted. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it, indeed, the ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the third reading of the bill.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill be read a third time. Honorable members, the question is that the bill be read a third time and passed. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it, indeed, the ayes have it.
A bill for an act shortly entitled Appropriation 2025 Bill 2025.
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to introduce for its first reading a bill for an act shortly entitled 2025 Budget and New Hospital Project Loan Authorization Bill 2025.
The bill which seeks to authorize the Minister of Finance to borrow specified amounts of money from various sources to finance the 2025 budget and to finance a new hospital project with teaching facilities, shortly entitled 2025 Budget and New Hospital Project Loan Authorization Bill 2025.
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the relevant standing order be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all its stages at this sitting.
Honorable members, the question is that the relevant standing order of the House be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all stages at this sitting. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it, indeed, the ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the second reading of the bill.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill be read a second time. Leader of Government Business. Oh, sorry, Prime Minister.
I just wanted to rise, Mr. Speaker, to extend my support for the bill and to point out that, first of all, as we said, Mr. Speaker, well, first of all, I want to say this. The authorization to borrow does not mean the borrowing will necessarily happen. It's a legal requirement that for the Minister of Finance to borrow, he must seek parliamentary approval. And so in this case, we have been prudent by ensuring that we seek the approval. If we do get to the point where a negotiated term sheet is agreed upon and the loan is contracted, then obviously the loan will be laid back in Parliament so that we can see what the terms are. Mr. Speaker, we would see that the schedule, in fact, does leave blank the interest rate to be negotiated, the terms and repayment to be negotiated, and the fees to be negotiated. And it highlights some of the potential lenders, the International Development Association, or what is called IDA, which generally supports the government with very, very generous concessionary loans, sometimes at less than 1% interest rates, or certainly under 2%, with usually 10-year moratoriums and 30-year repayment periods. The Caribbean Development Bank, which is our own development bank in the region, which we do a lot of our capital project financing from, Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, the regional government securities market, and I made reference to that in my earlier presentation by saying we currently have bonds that we have already raised, and that oftentimes these are simply refinanced, and if necessary from other companies, banks, and financial institutions. I want to point out, though, that a significant portion, almost half of this, is earmarked for the new hospital project, because as I said, we have a very aggressive timeline to try and break ground on this project in 2026. We have already secured the land, and so we need to secure the financing to do so. So if we get to the point where the Minister of Finance led a delegation to the Gulf states or the Middle East, including, I believe, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Dubai, and the team is speaking with what is called the Islamic donors, and we expect that the business plan, in fact, as we are here, Mr. Speaker, we anticipate that the business plan for the new hospital project, which is being done by Deloitte & Touche, will be shared with the cabinet, as well as some of the other studies, feasibility, pre-feasibility studies, so that we can have some discussion, so that those could be shared with our potential lenders. And to the MP's point for the town of St. George about making sure that there is widespread consultation and people understand what's going on, the Project Polaris team has been mandated to, in fact, retain a communication firm so that they can help with some of these engagements and the discussions that are required on this issue. But I want to emphasize, Mr. Speaker, we are living in some interesting times, and we have to appreciate that the potential for growth, economic growth, globally, are in large markets. Africa, Asia, the Gulf states, and Asia includes China, the Indian subcontinent. It's not just India, it's India, Malaysia, Pakistan. These are very populous countries, South and Central America. And if we do not forge deliberate strategic economic partnerships with these regions, the Caribbean and Grenada is going to struggle. So it is highly unlikely that we will get a traditional financier. I'm saying traditional here as in World Bank or IMF or North American or Canadian or European to finance this kind of development project. To them, your economy is too small, the risks are too great, you've got hurricanes, you've got small markets, etc. They are not going to finance this. It is through the innovation and the ingenuity of the PRG that the airport was built, and the significant collaboration with the Republic of Cuba. And the Minister of Foreign Affairs had already spoken on the situation with Cuba. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to emphasize that for us to do this, we are going to have to be innovative. We are going to have to seek partnerships from our friends far and wide, and we are going to have to keep an open and innovative approach to how we finance the construction of the hospital and how we finance the management and the operations of the new hospital, because no one wants this to be an albatross around the state. And so we need to have significant private capital and private money into what I call the health sector. The same way tourism is a sector, the same way agriculture is a sector, the same way healthcare is a sector. And we have to move beyond the idea of a government hospital, where the government every year comes with a budget and says this is the hospital, and then we have to struggle to meet the basic needs of our people. There's enormous money in healthcare, from the health insurance perspective, from the employment opportunities, from the health tourism perspective, from the wellness aspects of tourism, which we can't underestimate, to the cosmetic side of healthcare, and then to the traditional clinical side of healthcare. So we have to look to explore those opportunities, and the opportunities are in Africa, they're in Asia, they're in India. That's the fact. Most of the health challenges that we face in the Caribbean, they face it in Africa. And most of the research and development that is done by Western countries are done on people who don't look like us, who don't have the same genetic makeup for us, and oftentimes what is prescribed does not work. So you'd understand that a lot of the medication that is done for people with diabetes and so on simply do not work on people of African descent, or of Asian or Middle Eastern descent, because the research was not carried out on them. We have the university already, we have WINREF, we have significant economic advantages, and so, Mr. Speaker, we will not borrow, unless we absolutely need to do so. And we are also going to seek to put as much skin in the game, as much equity as possible. And you see the Minister of Finance has indicated that 25 million US is already being set aside in a special fund at the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank as part of our financing or helping to finance this hospital project, and we anticipate that on an annual basis we will set aside funds as well to ensure that we reduce the debt burden on the state if it comes to that point. But we are going to be very aggressive in seeking private equity. So I know what's going to happen. They're going to take the bill, now that they're not here, and see that a bill to borrow $800 million was passed. But as I've said, we are not actually, at this point in time, borrowing the $800 million. We will have to see whether we need to do so. And if we do, then obviously the terms will come back to Parliament and we will late. So I wanted to make that point very clear. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Prime Minister. MP for the town of St. George.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I know it's late and we've been here for 2 days, but I think this is an important bill that needs to be addressed. I am happy that the Prime Minister did rise to make some clarifications and to indicate at least the commitment that there is going to be more discussion on the issue, not only of the loan, not only of the financing, but generally on the hospital. I agree with him when he talks about, you know, our need to look to the non-traditional sources. The fact is that many of the traditional sources will not be able to help in some cases, having their own difficulties. But it is also because of the synergies that are developing. For example, the rise of the BRICS, you know, the BRICS countries. That is a very powerful arrangement that's developing. And countries like Grenada must move in the direction of developing these relations with Africa, because the fact is the African countries many of them are doing very well, and there's a lot not only we can get from them, but there's a lot we can learn from them and the relations. So I want to endorse that. With respect to that issue, that is why when I spoke earlier, I said that the assessments and so on, I know we looked at Mount Sinai, and Mount Sinai is a well-known hospital in North America, but and we must ensure, and I think the member St. David said it, that what they are proposing is in synergy with what we in these small islands and people of African descent and so on need to have. So as I indicated earlier, there are other assessments done by PAHO. PAHO is a Pan-American Health Organization. They are quite active, but I'm not saying do not proceed with the Mount Sinai arrangement. I'm simply saying there are other assessments that may have been done. When you get the Mount Sinai one, you can look at the PAHO one, PAHO being a regional organization that we can look at. So I agree with that position, and I appreciate the fact that he's indicating if it comes to the point of borrowing, there should be further discussions on that, because by that time you will have the terms and you will have all the arrangements that need to be in place as a country for borrowing what is a substantial amount. In addition to that, I think, and I just want to say this in closing, we need to have much more discussion on the operationalization of the hospital, because I believe it could become a white elephant if not done properly with the inputs of the people. The people have to buy into this project, just as they bought into the International Airport project. The International Airport project was a project people bought into. In fact, people went down to the airport to have rallies and meetings. They embraced it so much. So I am not standing here opposing this or opposing the construction of the hospital, but I am standing here for more participation and more inputs to make sure it is bought into and to make sure that we do it properly. A lot of money is going to be spent not by the government but by the people of Grenada, so the people of Grenada need to know more, and all of the MPs in this house need to know more about it. But I appreciate the assurance given by the Prime Minister, and I think we can work with that, so I have no difficulty. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, MP for Town of St. George. Honourable members, the question is that the bill be read a second time. And those with that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it indeed. The ayes have it.
Bill for an act shortly entitled 2025 Budget and New Hospital Project Loan Authorization Bill 2025.
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the House resolves itself into a committee of the whole House to consider this bill clause by clause. Thank you.
Honorable members, the question is that this Honorable House resolves itself into a committee of the whole House to consider the bill clause by clause. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it. This Honorable House is now in committee.
Clause 2, authority to raise loan.
Honorable members, the question is that Clause 2 forms part of the bill. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it.
Schedule.
Honorable members, the question is that schedule forms part of the bill. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it.
Clause 1, short title.
Honorable members, the question is that Clause 1 forms part of the bill. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I beg to move that the House resumes and the chairman of the committee report progress on the bill. Thank you.
Honorable members, the question is that this Honorable House resumes and the chairman of the committee reports progress on the bill. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it. This Honorable House now resumes. I have to report, honorable members, I have to report that the bill was considered by a committee of the whole House and passed without amendment. Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the chairman's report be adopted.
Honorable members, the question is that the chairman's report be adopted. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the third reading of the bill.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill be read a third time. Honorable members, the question is that the bill be read a third time and pass. Those of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it.
The bill for an act shortly entitled 2025 Budget and New Hospital Project Loan Authorization Bill 2025.
Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, we have had a long 2 days. I therefore beg to move that this House be adjourned, signing that.
Mr. Speaker. Just a word on the adjournment.
Go ahead, Honorable
Mr. Speaker,
Member.
just very short. Don't look so worried that I'm going to keep you long. During the debate, Mr. Speaker, I don't see my friend from Southwest here, but I told him I'll do this. He told me not to, but I'll do it. I did comment in my remarks that he had not made much comment or comments on the issue of pre-deal larceny. I was corrected because apparently I was not in the room when he said it, and I want to express my absolute horror that I offended my friend from St. Jude Southwest. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to withdraw that portion that he did apparently say a lot about pre-deal larceny. So I will go read it, and if I have to say anything on the next occasion, I will. But I do apologize to the House and apologize to him for not for saying something that was absolutely incorrect. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That is all.
Thank you, Honorable Member for the Tongue of St. George. Honorable Prime Minister.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm saying this because this is, I think, the second or third time that I noticed the opposition is simply walking out on the House during debates when the Speaker makes a ruling. I mean, the rules are clear. On any point that we may disagree on, or a member may disagree on, the Speaker has the authority to rule. And we cannot continue to sanction, in my view, respectfully, Mr. Speaker, the proper decorum in the House. If every time the Honourable MP for St. George Northwest feels that the Speaker is making a ruling that doesn't go in his favour, that we encourage not just him walking out, but all other members of the opposition walking out, and we keep countenancing this. So I am in fact giving fair warning that if the member for St. George Northwest does not want to sit in the House, then say so. Simply retire, give up the office of MP, have a by-election and let someone else do the job. There's been a persistent pattern of absences, a persistent pattern of, if the schedule doesn't fit his schedule, of trying to throw the entire sitting into disarray and making all kinds of stuff about the process and the fairness. A consistent pattern of any time he's asked to take a seat, it's basic courtesy. My friend knows that in court, if I'm on the feet and he stands, I sit. If the Speaker stands, you sit. And you can't be talking over the Speaker and repeating over the Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm saying this because, you know, the rules are very clear about the disciplinary powers of the House. And if we continue a situation where, and I'm saying this because, as the Prime Minister, I don't want any ill discipline creeping on my side. I don't want any ill discipline creeping on our side. I don't want the House to deteriorate to a point where the minute time someone disagrees with the Speaker makes a ruling someone doesn't agree with, they figure they can get up and walk out. And I don't want it on my side, and I certainly don't see why we should be tolerating. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm just putting on record that as the Member of Parliament for St. David, that this is not the kind of behavior we should be countenancing. And to me, at some point in time, something has to be done about it. Particularly for the other members who have no quarrel with you and who are not objecting. They already have spoken. And Mr. Speaker, I paused you. I came back in the House. We were sitting here for a while. You took a while to come back in. Even when I took the mic, I recognized that there was one other person who didn't have the opportunity to speak. And I was quite happy to take my seat and give the MP for St. George Northwest an opportunity to debate. Because at the end of the day, procedural rules aside, I have no difficulty with saying substantively you want persons, in the interest of fairness, to get an opportunity to contribute to the debate. I could have told the Minister of Finance, close the debate, in which case I didn't speak, he didn't speak. That wouldn't bother me. I have the opportunity to continue speaking. I can go and call out Tongolin, Boucher, or Appeal, or Pointer, Fontenoy, and we can talk about the budget perhaps better because I wouldn't have the restriction of an hour and a half. So I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, we can't have a situation where a mere difference of views over a procedural matter leads to this kind of storming out, you know, with a mother hen and the three chicken hens swallowing in a row. We have to do better than that, Mr. Speaker, and I'm simply putting it on record because I think if this continues, it will send the wrong example to our junior parliamentarians we are training right now. It will send the wrong example to the school children who are here. you have to appreciate that sometimes people have the right to make the decision. How do you make the decision? You persuade, but if after they say they ain't changing your mind, we have that in court all the time. You talk from now till that kingdom come, the judge sits, they rock, they sleep, and then wake up and they say, Mr. David, you talk good, but sending your client up. And you have to sit down and be respectful. So I don't understand how we in Parliament, and we have someone who served as an MP for 40 years, uninterrupted, and is behaving this way simply over a ruling with the Speaker. So I'm just putting this on record, Mr. Speaker, because I've tried to stay out of it, but I think it's becoming to the point where now we need to rise the thing. I'm sure, Mr. Speaker, you saw what went on in the Bahamas, where Honorable MP took the mace and physically threw it out the window, and the police and all of that had to get it turned into a complete fish market in Nassau. And if we don't stem this, this is what it's going to lead to. Because if it's not working at one, they might take the bottle out and throw it at you. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm putting this on record because I think somewhere someone has to talk some sense into the new leader of the opposition and into the old leader of the opposition so that this sort of behavior doesn't persist. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, if I may, the member is in the House, so I hope members convey to him my apologies for the statement. The member for Somoto. I'm just sorry for interjecting like this, but he's in the House now. I just wanted to tell him to his face.
Yes, that's all right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister, for your comments. I take it it's time for us to close. All right, honorable member. The question is that this honorable House be adjourned sine die. Those of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. This honorable House is now adjourned sine die.
Mr. Speaker, sorry. Mr. Speaker, as the British would say, has supper been provided?
Yes, there is a bit of supper/refreshment at the back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.